It started like any other ordinary summer evening. I was scrolling through old photos on my phone, laughing at the ridiculous hairstyles and awkward poses, when a notification popped up, a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. I said, "Wait, is this really him?" The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a title. My childhood friend suddenly disappeared and returned with a shocking truth for a decade. Ethan, my childhood best friend, my partner in every prank, secret, and late-night adventure. The same friend who had vanished without a word when we were 15, leaving behind nothing but questions and a hollow gap in my memories. I said, "Ethan, is this you? After all these years?" A reply came almost instantly. "Yeah, it's me. I need to tell you something. Can we meet?" A rush of conflicting emotions hit me. Excitement, confusion, a tiny spark of fear. Why now, after all these years? And what could he possibly need to tell me that couldn't wait for a decade? I agreed to meet him at our old hangout spot, a small park near the lake, where we used to skip stones and talk about everything and nothing. As I walked there, memories flooded back. The laughter, the whispered secrets, the plans for the future we'd sketched under the shade of that old oak tree. He was already there, sitting on the edge of the dock, staring at the water. He hadn't changed much, but there was a hardness in his eyes now, something I didn't recognize. I said, "Ethan, you disappeared. You just left. No warning, no note, no sign. Why?" He looked up slowly, hesitation heavy in his expression. He said I had to go. I didn't have a choice. I said, "Not a choice? You could have told me something, anything. You left me hanging all these years." There was a pause, a weight between us that wasn't just the years. He said, "I know, and I'm sorry, but what I'm about to tell you, it changes everything." I said, "Everything, Ethan? You're scaring me." He leaned forward, voice low, eyes darting to make sure no one else was around. He said, "I've been involved in something dangerous, something I couldn't explain before, and I can't stay silent anymore." My heart started racing. Memories of our innocent childhood flashed against the starkness of his words. This was no longer the playful friend I had known. Something had pulled him into shadows I couldn't see, and now it was reaching out to me. I said, "Dangerous? Ethan, what are you talking about? Please just tell me." He said, "I can't hear. Too many people watch. But soon, I'll explain everything, and you need to be ready." This isn't like anything we've dealt with before. A cold shiver ran down my spine. For the first time in years, I felt the world I knew shift under me. The boy I grew up with, the one I trusted more than anyone, was gone, and in his place was someone carrying secrets that could destroy everything I thought I knew. As I left the park, my mind spun. What had Ethan gotten himself into? And why had he kept me in the dark for so long? The truth wasn't coming gently. It was coming like a storm, and I had no choice but to face it. Next morning, I couldn't shake the conversation from my mind. Ethan's words echoed constantly. "I've been involved in something dangerous." My first instinct was to dismiss it as exaggeration, maybe a twisted sense of nostalgia or an overdramatic way to reconnect. But deep down, I knew better. Something in his tone, in the way he avoided eye contact, screamed that he was serious. I said, "Okay, slow down. Start from the beginning. What happened while you were gone?" He said, "I can't tell you everything yet. Not here. But I can leave clues. Little pieces. You'll need to pay attention." I said, "Clues? Ethan, are you trying to scare me?" He said, "Not scare. Prepare. You've always been good at noticing things. This time, you'll need every bit of that skill." I spent the day trying to focus on anything else. Work, errands, even cleaning. But my mind kept drifting back to Ethan. Then I noticed something unusual. A small folded note tucked under my apartment door. I didn't remember leaving it there, and it had no handwriting I recognized. I said, "What the hell?" Inside there was a single sentence. "Don't trust the people you think you know." My pulse quickened. It had to be from Ethan. But why leave a cryptic warning instead of a direct explanation? And why here, in my own apartment? The casualness of the placement made it all the more chilling. By evening, I decided to call Hannah, my best friend and the one person I could confide in without feeling judged. I said, "Hannah, I need your opinion. Something weird is happening with Ethan, and I don't know how much to believe." She said, "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning, slow. I'll help you figure it out. As I explained the sudden reappearance, the cryptic message, and Ethan's insistence on leaving clues, Hannah's voice grew quiet. She said, "This is serious. You've always said he's level-headed. If he's giving warnings like this, you need to pay attention. But promise me you'll stay careful. Don't confront anyone yet." I said, "I promise. I think. But why would he disappear all those years, only to come back now, and dragging me into something like this?" She said, "Maybe he finally realized you could help him, or maybe someone's after him, and now you're involved by association." The thought made my stomach churn. Ethan had left me completely in the dark for years, and now, not only was he back, but he had apparently pulled me into a dangerous game I didn't even understand. Later that night, I checked my messages again. There was one from Ethan I hadn't noticed before, time-stamped hours after our park meeting. "Meet me tomorrow. Bring nothing but your instincts. The rest will follow." I said, "Bring nothing but my instincts. What does that even mean?" Sleep was impossible. Every creak in the apartment, every shadow made me jump. I felt eyes on me, even though I was alone. It was as if Ethan's warning had awakened something I had never anticipated. The realization that danger could be closer than I thought. The next morning, I found another note tucked into my bag, this one more detailed. It wasn't a map, exactly, but a set of instructions. Pay attention to people you know, notice unusual behavior, question things that seem trivial. I said, "He's turning me into a detective? Or is this a trap?" Hannah said over the phone, "Trust your instincts. Don't overthink, but don't ignore anything. Whatever he's involved in, it's big." I packed a small bag, thinking I might need to leave home in a hurry, and retraced my steps from the previous day, paying attention to everything. Faces, shadows, even car license plates. Every sound, every glance seemed significant. By the time I met Ethan again at the same park, I was alert, tense, ready for anything. I said, "Okay, I'm here. Start talking. Now." He said, "Not yet. First observe. Look around. Notice people you trust, your friends, colleagues, even neighbors. Something isn't right. Someone has been following me, and they might have started following you." My heart sank. It was one thing to suspect danger from strangers, but to hear that people I knew could be involved was terrifying. I said, "People I trust? Are you serious? Who? Who's involved?" He said, "I can't say yet, but there's a pattern, small signs that you'll see if you're paying attention. Start watching. Don't act until you're certain." I realized in that moment, the past was no longer simple childhood memories. It had become a puzzle, a maze I was now forced to navigate. And Ethan's sudden disappearance years ago, that was only the beginning of a web I hadn't even begun to untangle. The next day, I met Ethan at the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, the place he'd chosen, away from prying eyes. My heart pounded as I approached. The air smelled damp, metallic, and something about the shadows stretching across the cracked concrete made me uneasy. I said, "Why here? Why not anywhere else?" He said, "Privacy. And if someone's watching, this place is easy to monitor. Trust me." I followed him inside, my senses heightened. Every sound, footsteps, dripping water, a distant groan, felt amplified. Ethan stopped near a rusted metal staircase and turned toward me, his expression serious. I said, "All right, start talking. You've been gone for years, and now you're back dropping cryptic clues and warnings. What's really going on?" He said, "It started when I got involved with the wrong people, the kind you don't notice until it's too late. I was naive, thinking I could navigate it without consequences. But I was wrong. They found me, and I had to disappear." I said, "Disappear? For years? You left me completely in the dark. Do you realize how that feels?" He said, "I know. I never wanted you dragged into this, but now it's impossible to keep you out. Someone's watching, and they'll stop at nothing to make sure I don't escape, and that you don't see the truth." I swallowed hard, a mix of fear and disbelief twisting inside me. The boy I had grown up with, my childhood friend, wasn't just lost. He was caught in something dangerous, something bigger than I could imagine. I said, "And the clues, the notes, the warnings? You were trying to prepare me? He said, exactly. I didn't know who to trust anymore, and I couldn't risk anyone intercepting direct communication. Every step you take has to be careful. Every person you meet could be a threat or an ally. I said, an ally? I can't just guess. But how do I know who? He said, observe, pay attention, trust your instincts, and listen to your gut, no matter how small the feeling. That's how you'll survive this and help me finish what I started. As we spoke, I noticed a small envelope tucked beneath a loose floorboard near the staircase. I picked it up, my hands trembling. Inside was a series of photographs, familiar faces, people I knew, some friends from school, some colleagues, and even neighbors. Each photo was marked with tiny symbols I didn't recognize at first. I said, What are these? He said, potential threats, or people who have information. The symbols indicate what they know, how dangerous they are, and whether they're likely to lie. You'll need to learn the code if we're going to survive. I said, learn a code? Ethan, this is insane. I'm just trying to process the fact that you were missing for years and now... He said, I know, it's overwhelming. But you're stronger than you think. You've always been sharp, observant, like you have a radar for people. You'll figure this out. My stomach tightened. Every instinct screamed that danger was closer than I realized. The familiar comfort of childhood friendship had transformed into a tense battlefield where trust was currency. And I had no idea who had any. I said, and the truth? The truth you promised? When do I find out? He said, soon. But first you have to prove you can handle it. Every clue, every observation, every interaction, it matters. If you misstep, even slightly, we could both be in real danger. I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. The Ethan I remembered, the boy I used to play soccer with, who laughed at my terrible jokes, was gone. In his place was someone hardened, cautious, carrying secrets that could unravel everything I thought I knew about our past, our friendship, and perhaps even my own life. As I left the warehouse, clutching the envelope tightly, I realized that the story of my childhood friend was no longer a nostalgic memory. It was a labyrinth of hidden truths, deceit, and danger. And I was now unwillingly, irrevocably, at the center of it. The day after our warehouse meeting, I couldn't focus on anything. Every familiar corner of my town, every friend's smile, every routine I had taken for granted, now felt suspicious. I kept replaying Ethan's words, his warnings, the envelope. Who could I trust? And what had he really been hiding all those years? I decided to start with small, deliberate steps, checking the photos again, memorizing faces, noticing patterns. That's when I realized one of the symbols wasn't like the others. It was hidden in plain sight, scribbled lightly on a corner, almost like it didn't belong. I said, Ethan, there's something odd here. This symbol, it doesn't match the rest. What does it mean? He said over the phone, good catch. That one, that's the wild card. Someone we never expected. They could help, or they could destroy everything. I said, a wild card? You're being deliberately vague. I can't read minds here. How do I prepare? He said. Observe. Watch for inconsistencies in behavior, patterns in speech, timing of messages. You'll feel it before you see it clearly. Just trust your instincts. That afternoon, I ran into my childhood friend group, people I hadn't seen since Ethan disappeared. At first, everything seemed normal. Smiles, casual greetings, reminiscing about old memories. But then I noticed tiny discrepancies. Sarah, who always laughed at my jokes, hesitated slightly. Her eyes darted toward someone I couldn't see. Tom, usually so chatty, avoided my gaze entirely. I said, why is everyone acting weird? What happened while I wasn't looking? He said, you're noticing the threads. Good. Keep tracking. People often reveal themselves through small slips, even when they try to hide it. That evening I met Ethan again, this time in a quiet cafe. He was tense, scanning every entrance, every reflection. I said, Ethan, this is exhausting. Every move I make feels like walking a tightrope. He said, exactly. And that's the point. If it were easy, we'd be safe. Nothing worth uncovering ever is. Remember, Danger is often disguised as normality. He slid a small folder across the table. Inside were documents, bank statements, travel receipts, emails, connecting people I knew to events I'd never associated with them. Every page raised questions I didn't want to ask, and yet had to. I said, This proves what? That my friends were involved? That my town isn't what it seemed? He said, partially. Some of it is coincidence, some of it is deliberate, and some will make your stomach turn. You need to process this slowly. We can't act recklessly. The sun dipped behind the skyline, casting shadows across the table. I felt like a child playing detective in a world that had grown impossibly larger while I slept. The childhood innocence that once defined my friendships had been replaced by layers of deception, hidden motives, and unspoken alliances. I said, I feel like I've been blind all these years. How do I even start to understand? He said, one step at a time. Observe, catalog, confirm. Every piece of information matters, and you'll need patience, more than you've ever had before. This is only the beginning. The truth is bigger than you think. Walking home later that night, I felt the first real weight of responsibility. Ethan's disappearance, the warnings, the secret connections. This wasn't just his story anymore. Somehow I had become part of it, and part of me wondered, with a knot tightening in my chest, whether I'd ever truly understand who was friend, who was foe, and whether the truth could ever be safe to reveal. By the time I reached my apartment, I had resolved to stay vigilant. Every conversation, every glance, every casual interaction could carry meaning. And somewhere deep down, a part of me feared that the shocking truth Ethan promised would change everything I thought I knew about my past, my friends, and even myself. The next morning, I woke up with a strange mix of determination and dread. The folder Ethan had given me lay open on my desk, each document a breadcrumb leading deeper into a maze I wasn't sure I wanted to enter. I had to know the truth, but the closer I got, the more I feared what I might find. I started by retracing the paths of my childhood friends. Every social media post, every subtle comment, it all needed scrutiny. Then I noticed a pattern. Disappearances, strange absences, messages deleted too quickly. Someone had been orchestrating things, manipulating memories, creating an illusion. I said, Ethan, it's worse than I thought. It's not just hiding. Someone has been controlling things for years. He said, exactly. And it's closer than you think. Look at the people you trust the most. They aren't just passive observers. That afternoon, I confronted Sarah at a quiet park, the same place from our childhood. I said, Sarah, I need to ask, where were you all those times I couldn't find you? She hesitated. I can't tell you everything yet. You wouldn't understand. It's bigger than our friendship. I said, try me. I've seen the documents. Ethan showed me the connections. You're hiding something important. She took a deep breath. Okay, but promise me you won't react the wrong way. I never wanted to hurt you. I said, I can't promise yet, but you need to tell me now. The truth spilled out in fragments, tangled and messy. Sarah had been recruited by a secret organization with reach far beyond our small town. They had trained her in manipulation, observation, even deception. And now she had returned, with a mission that included me. I said, You were working with them? All this time? My childhood. Everything we shared. She said, I never wanted to hurt you. You were my anchor. But I had a job, and it required sacrifices. Some things you can't understand yet. The weight of her words pressed down on me. Betrayal, fear, confusion, all rolled into one. But at least now, I knew. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't paranoid. This was real, I said. So every disappearance, every lie, it was part of their plan? She said, yes, and they're still watching. Every step you take is monitored. That's why Ethan reached out. You're not safe if you act recklessly. I felt a cold dread mixed with a strange clarity. Everything I had thought was random or harmless had been orchestrated. Every interaction, every laugh, every friendship had been part of shaping me, preparing me for this moment, I said. Then, everything I trusted, everything I believed about my friends, my life, it's all fake? He said. Not fake, real in the moments you felt it, but influenced. Every experience shaped to test your instincts, to prepare you for what's coming. You're more ready than you realize. That night, I sat alone, piecing together every detail. The maze was bigger than I had imagined, the stakes higher than I could comprehend. But for the first time, I felt ready. Not because I had all the answers, but because I finally understood the truth. I had been part of this story from the beginning, and now the story was coming for its climax. I whispered. This isn't just about finding the truth. It's about surviving it and taking control before it consumes me. The next morning, I met Ethan at the old warehouse, the same place where so many revelations had begun. I said, Ethan, I need the final picture. No more breadcrumbs, no more half-truths. He said, Good, you're ready, but be warned. What you're about to learn, it will change everything you thought you knew about your past, your friends, and even yourself. He handed me a folder thicker than any before, filled with documents, photographs, and recordings. The story unfolded. Sarah's recruitment, Ethan's disappearance, the notes, the warnings. It was all part of a single orchestrated plan by a clandestine organization. But the most shocking part wasn't their reach. It was my own role. I said, No, this can't be real. All of this, it's about me? He said, It always was. Your instincts, your attention to detail, your ability to notice what others overlooked, they've been preparing you for this moment since childhood. Every laugh, every prank, every seemingly insignificant choice, it shaped you into someone who could survive this world. Memories of old games, shared secrets, and even small betrayals now carried a new weight. They weren't innocent. They were tests, training grounds, simulations of the challenges I would face. I said, So, everything I thought was normal, everything I trusted, it was manipulated? He said, Yes and no. The moments were real. They mattered to you, to me, and to your growth. But they were calculated. You were unknowingly being prepared for the center of it all. I felt the enormity of it pressing down on me. My friends, my family, even my own memories. They weren't what I thought. And yet, I was the one who could navigate the chaos. I said, Then what do I do now? How do I use this knowledge? He said, Observe. Act carefully. Every ally, every enemy, every detail matters. And remember, your instincts brought you here. Trust them, and you'll survive. Misstep, and it could destroy everything you care about. I spent hours going through the files, connecting dots, mapping relationships, noting vulnerabilities. The organization's reach was vast, subtle, but all my years of unwitting training had equipped me with skills I never knew I possessed. I said, I understand now. I see the patterns, the connections, and my role. I'm not just a victim or a pawn. I can fight this. I can control my part in it. He said, Exactly. You've finally grasped it. And now, you're ready to step forward. The real work begins, but you won't be alone. The people who truly matter, those loyal to you, will stand with you. But the rest, you need to navigate carefully. As the sun dipped low, I felt the weight of years lift slightly. Fear lingered, but it was tempered with clarity. I wasn't just uncovering the truth, I was becoming its agent. I said, All right, I know what I have to do. I see the bigger picture now, and I won't let them control me, or anyone else, any longer. He nodded, a faint smile breaking the tension. Good. Every decision, every move, every observation will matter more than you can imagine. And you're ready. You've always been ready. That night, I left the warehouse with a sense of purpose I had never felt before. The childhood I thought I had lost was gone, replaced by a reality far more dangerous and far more consequential than I had ever imagined. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was prepared. I was at the center of a storm I had unknowingly been trained to survive. And now, I would take control, piece by piece, truth by truth, until the maze that had defined my life was finally mine to navigate. The shocking truth had been fully revealed, the long-hidden connections clear. And I knew, without a doubt, that nothing would ever be the same again.